Today we're going to talk about publishing as a marketing tool. We have a lot more options in publishing today than we ever have any time in the past. It is not just an option for people who consider themselves to be career writers. It is also an option for business people, entrepreneurs of all stripes, all walks, whether you have a small business or whether you are a one-person shop. So we're going to talk about that today. Has anyone in here thought about writing a book for their business or having to do with their business? I know you. Okay, so everybody has thought about it. What we're going to talk about today is, first we're going to talk a little bit about the changing landscape in both publishing and also a little bit of marketing and publicity. I'm going to give you an overview of some of the differences between the traditional model of publishing and self-publishing. A lot of people make the assumption that because self-publishing is so common now and so prevalent in many ways, that is the best and only way to go. And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. One of the other things we're going to talk about today is how you can decide what is best for you, because everybody's business is different, everybody's expectations are different. We're going to talk about sort of getting better in touch with what those expectations are that you have, how you can therefore choose your content and your audience and your delivery method better based on the expectations that you have for you as an individual and for your business if that's what you're thinking of doing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, this is my shameless self-promotion slide. So I've been writing for about 17 years now. I started out in journalism. I've published many, 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 many books. These are probably the two that I'm best known for recently because they're kind of recent titles. This is the book I'm currently working on now. It's about the Manhattan Project. Simon Schuster's publishing that next year. So I've been in this world longer than I usually want to admit in public. Back when you actually used to have to pick up the phone to do interviews with people, and when fax machines came out, it was very exciting. So I am a pre-interweb person, but now I have embraced all that to a great extent. Now, this book is the reason that I'm here, really. This is a book that I did with my husband, the laser on his forehead, that talks about money management for freelancers and the self-employed. And we're actually doing I'm the lead on this talk. My husband Joe is going to be the lead on another talk this afternoon at 1 o'clock about being a freelance money geek. But what's interesting and how this relates to what we're talking about today is this book almost didn't happen because I had spent so much time writing about different topics, writing about history, doing news reporting, writing for magazines, doing books on lots of nonfiction narrative books, that the idea of doing a book on finance and money management seemed crazy, but I was still writing about it. And it was an intense part of my experience. So my agent, who knew I was, blogging about it and giving people advice and, having, little conferences at the local bookstore, she said, why don't you go ahead and do a book about this? And that's one of the things that we're going to touch on a little bit later today, which is that sometimes people just think, okay, if I'm a lawyer, I have to write a book about law. And we're going to have a couple examples of people who have just used their experience as a way to find content for a book that therefore comes back around and ends up helping either their business or other titles. Because what actually has happened with this book is it drove more eyes and more people, not just to my website, but to other books that I had already published. So just because one of the messages today is just because something doesn't seem like, I'm a web designer, I have to write about web design. That may be true, that may not be true. So one of the things you want to do when you think about how you want to broaden your network is make sure to take into account all aspects of your experience that might be applicable. So why on earth would anyone ever want to write a book? There are three main reasons that most people usually get into it, especially from a marketing standpoint. To promote your business. In a way, it's a little bit like having a very large brochure, except it's the kind of brochure that can actually get more attention in a wider variety of arenas. Establish your credentials as an expert. Now, this is a big plus for a lot of people. Despite these snookies of the world that get book contracts, when somebody has a published book, people generally think they might kind of know what they're talking about. So a lot of people like to have that as a credential builder. And then also you have the possibility of making money. Now, it's important to point out that making money may be, some people only think of it directly, like actually making money from book sales. But the other thing we want to think about is making money because whatever you have put out there has brought more clients in your door, more customers in your door, expanded your service base. So this is not just a direct result of whatever you're going to publish. It could also be indirect. Okay, now, one of the reasons that a lot of businesses are starting to turn to publishing is that and I actually do a lot of ghostwriting as well. I will write other people's books for them. A lot of the people that end up coming my way are business people who have something to say but don't necessarily know how to say it, know how to do a book proposal, etc. Used to be if you wanted to get publicity for your business, maybe you got a publicist, you took out an ad in a newspaper, you know, a print journal, something like that. As you can see from, I'm not going to just read my slides. So as you can see from these up here, the landscape has changed dramatically when it comes to print journalism. And so what happens is businesses are now realizing they have got to, in a sense, not only look for other ways to publicize themselves, but become content creators. And this is much more common, and basically because everyone's starting to do it, I mean, businesses are putting up tip sheets and how I got here and writing business memoirs about, it's like a personal memoir, but it's about a company instead of about an individual. And these are the kinds of things, because most people are getting their information digitally, these are the kinds of things that are getting a lot more information. I mean, we go looking at the other slide. I'm going to go back for just a second. I mean, how many people in this room have a subscription to a print newspaper? 2. Okay. In a Pew survey last year, I think, or the year before, it was 65% of people who are connected mobily choose to get their news from a screen of some sort, either their phone or their television or their computer screen. Most is the phone and the computer screen. So, whoops, these are counterintuitive buttons, I've noticed. You click the wrong way to go. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to just give you a quick overview of the different publishing models, because a lot of people have a lot of misunderstandings about how these operate. Okay, so traditional publishing. What is traditional publishing? When I talk about traditional publishing, I talk about generally what they call the big 6 publishers, who basically run almost every publishing house in the entire world. They are the ones who have all the books in Barnes & Noble and Borders, etc. So what is the benefit of working with traditional publishing is, for most people, this part right here. You get an advance. Keyword is advance, means you get money ahead of time to write your book. Now, the way that you go about this, in the case of a nonfiction book, you would write a nonfiction book proposal. In the case of a fiction book, which is not out of the question for promotion purposes, you would write the entire book. You take that proposal or book, you try and find an agent. That agent takes that product, works it over with you, and tries to find a publisher. Ideally, they get several publishers battling it out for your product, so it runs the price up, and then you get an advance. You use that advance while you write the book. That all sounds great, right? The publisher assumes all the costs, the printing it, warehousing books, some publicity and marketing, depending on how well they do. But here is what happens. They get 85 to 90% of every book, and you get 10 to 15. Usually you start at 10 for a hardcover, and it will go up to 15 once you've sold X thousand copies of your book, If it is paperback or it has gone from Barnes & Noble to Walmart, that's usually like 7%, not 10. So while all this is great, down here is what many people consider the con. Now, the other perk of this is, of course, your book gets in Barnes & Noble. Your book gets in Borders. Your book gets an ISBN number and gets listed on Amazon and all that sort of stuff. If you've ever known anyone who's ever tried to get a self-published book in a bookstore, you know that it's pretty much almost impossible unless it's your local independent bookstore and they are encouraging that community. Okay, so self-publishing, the print model. Now this used to be, if you were self-publishing, this used to be the only thing you could do. You basically, now you assume all the costs. That means you write it for free. You don't get an advance. You have to take care of the cover design. You have to make sure it's ideally properly copy edited, all of that good stuff. Now, what it used to be is then you had to get a hold of a vanity press, and you usually had like 500 copies of a book in your garage that if somebody bought it, you're mailing it out and you're running to the post office. In the print world now, what you have is print on demand. So there are services like lulu.com, createspace.com. I should have mentioned this at the top. I'm going to have notes about this talk on my website. I'm going to bring the website up again at the end. So all this information you're going to have, and you can download it and have it. It's all yours. But now we have something called print on demand. What that means is an actual printed book never exists until somebody buys a copy of your book. So if you self-publish with one of these services, for example, and you load it up to Amazon and somebody goes to Amazon and says, I want to buy their book, that is when that book gets printed and that is when it gets shipped, so you can avoid the 500 copies in my garage debacle. Now, how does the profit look compared to the other? Well, it looks a little better. Amazon, for example, which is where most self-published authors sell their books, takes about 40%, where the author gets 60%. So that is significantly better than the prior model. However, we're still dealing, if you're doing print copies, you're still dealing with dead trees. So you have to take the printing cost out of whatever profit you're getting. So this is just a little math we did here, because this math is so much fun. So you have, they charge you 85 cents no matter what, 12 cents per page. So whatever your retail, say again?
1 cent per page.
Oh, sorry. Whatever your retail price is, okay, say it's $13.95, you're taking off
40%.
Amazon. I'm going to throw you out of here, buddy. I'm allowed to say that to him. We're married. You take off Amazon's cut, and then you still have to subtract what the printing cost is, because we're still dealing with somebody having to print up copies of these books, physical copies of these books. So that takes your profit down to around 28%. Now, of course, compared to the 10 to 15%, that still seems like a pretty good profit. Now, con in the self-publishing situation is, of course, getting your book into major book outlets. Publicity, I mean, some people think if you get your book traditionally published that, you know, the publisher just does everything, which is not true, but they do more than if you're self-publishing. That's absolutely true. So you can see when you're dealing still with print, your profit goes down a bit. Now, digital publishing. So at some point, somebody figured out, wow, it would be really great if we never had to print up any of these things. Now, everybody's on the digital bandwagon. Who here has some sort of digital book reader thingy? Okay, that's by far the majority of people in this room. Do you find that you read more with your e-reader? I see a lot of heads nodding. I see one no. I saw a lot of yeses and a so-so. I always ask this when I give this talk because I find it interesting that I find a lot of people saying that they actually read more having an e-reader. I guess because it's just easy and it's right there and you can just download it. So what this does is this has not only made it easier for individuals to make money, it has also made it easier for publishers to make money. I mean, because if you go back to this, oops, see, I don't like these buttons. Okay, if you go back here, this is the self-publishing print model. The temptation, of course, is, well, if I want to make more money, I should just charge more for the book. But of course, the problem is if you're self-publishing, why is somebody going to pay $20 for a book from someone they've maybe never heard of when they can get a James Patterson bestseller for $5.99? So just pricing your thing higher doesn't necessarily help you out. So here's the digital model. Now, traditional publishers and self-publishing, everybody's publishing digitally. If you get a traditional book deal, 99% of the time, your publisher is also going to release that in digital format. Why? Because they make so much more money. It's crazy. For something that years ago they thought wasn't going to catch on, no one wants to give up having a book. They went from that to fear to now they actually just released a couple weeks ago annual reports. Publishers are finding out something really interesting, which is they are selling fewer books, but they are making more money. Part of the reason for that is they don't have to warehouse books. You pay taxes on books that you warehouse. They don't have printing costs. They just have a digital file that gets downloaded over and over and over again. So the same benefit available to traditional publishers is also available now to the self-publisher. So you pay less and you take most of the money. Why do you pay less? You still have to write the book for free. You still have to take care of your own book cover design, copy editing, etc. I can't say copy editing enough for anyone who's considering self-publishing. And however, you do not have the dead trees cost that we saw on the other screen. Once you have that digital file properly formatted, you can sell that all over the place and you never have to pay to have anything printed up. So in a sense, the self-publisher and the traditional publisher are making the same, are reaping the same benefit in a sense. And okay, and you're selling your digital file. Okay, so here, for example, is an example of the digital self-publishing profit model. These prices are based on Amazon. Believe me, I am not up here trying to sing the praises of Amazon, but it just happens to be the most viable marketplace for digital self-publishers right now, unless you have a website that gets a tremendous amount of traffic, in which case you should definitely be selling it there. This is kind of strange. Some people, one time when I gave this talk, somebody said your slide is screwed up. It's not. If you charge $2.99 or up for your book, they will take, and it's not just Amazon that does this, other vendors do this too. They will take 30% of whatever you sell it for. If you charge under $2.99, they will take 65%. Now, why do they do this? Well, they don't want, there are so many people putting so much stuff out there for 99 cents, 50 cents for free. They want to encourage you to charge at least enough so that they're getting a little bit of money from you. So basically, if, you know, up to $2.98, you're only getting a 35% profit, which of course is still more than getting 10%. But once you go up above that, your profit margin jumps to 70%. Now, of course, if this were an ebook that was an electronic version of something that had been traditionally published, you would be splitting that with your publisher at your usual 90-10 split. So now, why would anybody, looking back at the other page, right, why would anybody ever want to price something 99 cents, $1.50, you know, $2.50? Well, because in the self-publishing realm, you again, as I said before, are battling, most people battling the fact that most people may not know who you are. So what you want to do is you kind of want to, most people try and get them in the door with a low price. Because we usually make two decisions when we're going to buy a book. One, does this interest me? You know, do people say this is good? Does this look appealing? Do I need it? And the other is, you know, do I want to spend the money on it? This is what I like to call the app effect. You're walking down the street, you have your phone, you hear a song in a bar, that's kind of cool, I'm going to Shazam it, that's awesome, should I get it? It's 99 cents. Think. You don't think twice about it. There are a lot of people that have worked for a long time on self-publishing who make a significant amount of money off of 99-cent downloads, because what they are lacking in individual sale price, they are making up for in volume. So that's, one approach to this. So that's the general overview of how the publishing landscape has changed, traditional versus self versus digital self. So it would seem after all this that, oh my gosh, I should absolutely, positively digitally self-publish because it's the biggest profit and I don't have to print up anything. Not necessarily. And here is where people, especially when they're trying to do something that's going to boost sales, this is when they start to get into kind of tricky area. You have to be aware, the same way you would if you're selling a product or if you're providing a service, you need to know who your customers are, who you're trying to reach with your message, how you're going to reach them, and just what are you expecting from the process. I mean, for example, we're talking about how everybody is getting most of their news from, phones and computer screens. Well, if you happen to be in a business that serves the elderly population, for example, you should probably stick with print advertising, So depending on, what kind of service you're providing. If you're providing stuff for, small children, it's like one of the biggest nuts to crack is, children's books, nobody wants to read them on e-readers because people like the big books and the big shiny pictures. So that's just kind of an extreme example of there is not just sort of one shoe that fits everybody. Now, your content, it may be directly related to what you do for your business, or it may be tangentially related. We're going to look at some examples in a second. So your audience, know who they are and know how you're going to reach them. And your expectations are key. Everybody, too many people when they, sell a book, they want to sell, X number thousands of copies and make this much money, but you never feel that way when you're like printing up a new rack card or a brochure. You're thinking, I'm going to use this to promote my business. So you can think of a book in the same way. Think of, do I want, I'm not saying you can't want to make money off of your book, but just be sure are you fulfilling some need that, you want to be a writer, or do you really just want to use this to promote your work? Because if you just want to use it to promote your work, the actual direct income you're getting from that product might not make as much of a difference as the new people you're reaching because you have created that product. So when you start to think of it almost like as a big glorified brochure that could bring more money in the door, that's an interesting way to look at it. So, for example, okay, so we're going to talk about a couple different situations here. These are all true stories. I didn't make these up. These are all actual people. The first one. How am I doing on time? Oh my God, I'm fine. Okay. The first one is a woman called Donna Cutting. I met Donna, I guess about 2 or 3 years ago. She came to a book talk that we were giving about our freelance money book. She's a freelancer. Donna is a professional speaker. Now, Donna is a professional speaker now. Donna wanted to be a professional speaker, and she wanted to talk specifically about customer service. She looked at a variety of speaker sites. She looked at what the requirements were. She looked at what people had on their resumes, some of the speakers that were getting the best fees and getting the best gigs and things like that. And she noticed that several of them had written books. So she decided she was going to start doing some speaking locally, but as soon as possible, she was going to write a book. And she wanted to do this for her main reason. So she had a very specific goal in mind. Her goal was, Donna Cutting, want to be a professional speaker. I want to get paid to travel around, and I want to be able to talk on the subject of customer service. So the book is a product in a sense, but the ultimate product here is Donna and how she wants to make her living and how she wants to expand her career. So she did what you're supposed to do. She went and she looked and she said, who has written books on customer service? Turned out, not that many people. She looked at the ones that had been written. She looked at how well they did. She got them. She read them. She saw who published them. She saw when the last time was that they were published. And what she figured out was no one had really compiled a book of techniques of the best possible customer service approaches in play in the country. So she did some very smart things that anybody here who works in market research will tell you. She saw what was already out there, what was working, what wasn't working, and how all of that information could suit her personal goal of wanting to take this to the next level and be a paid speaker. So she came up with a book called The Celebrity Experience. She interviewed people at Pepsi, at American Express, at all these different places, went to their customer service departments, and she talked to them about what they did. So where did she get her content? Well, she went straight to the content that she wanted to deliver when she was giving her talks. Where else did she get her content? She went to experts in the field who some people might have viewed as even competitors. I mean, those people actually go out and lecture on customer service too, but she was doing it for a different reason. So she went to experts and added to her expertise with the expertise of others. And then she decided, I put this down here because we have different examples, she decided to try to go the traditional publishing route. Why did she do this? She did this because her entire goal here was she wanted to, when people went to public speaker websites, there are a lot of agencies that offer public speakers, she wanted people to get to her page and say, oh, she's an author. Oh, she was published with Crown, or I forget who she was, Wiley. She wanted that, what she considered to be that kind of clout. She also wanted to make sure, because most of the people she's speaking to, corporate people, they would be more likely to buy their books in traditional settings. So these were all things that she took into account when she decided she was going to go the traditional publishing route, and she took the time to do a book proposal, she did her market research, she got in advance, etc. Now because she has a traditional publisher, she also has ebooks, but she would never, ever, ever give up the print books. Can anyone guess why? How does she, did you read, was that your? Yes, exactly, exactly, exactly. This is a perfect example of someone, even if she were self-publishing, having a print book is an absolute must for her. Again, that goes back to, content, audience, expectations. What was she expecting from her book? She wasn't expecting it to be, a bestseller that turned her into a career writer. She was expecting it to help her grow her speaking career, which it did dramatically. And why print? Because her audience is not just corporate people, but people who are going to be in the room with her. And when you're in a setting, it's like here, you're at a conference, you're meeting people, you're excited, yeah, I'm going to get a book, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. She gives a really great talk, and then she says, hey, my books are on sale in the back of the room, and I'll autograph them for you, and I'll talk to you, and you cannot pass up an opportunity like that. So for Donna, content was feeding the goal, her career goal. She went the traditional route because as valuable and as prevalent and as important as self-publishing is, it's still the quality of self-published books ranges from want to throw it in the fireplace to actually quite good. So she wanted to feel as though she had a certain amount of clout, and she had to have print copies in addition to any digital versions, because that's how she reaches her audience. So that was the decision making that went into this particular business person's approach. And it's also a great book, by the way. Now, we were talking at the beginning about kind of looking beyond your own experience. This book, The 9-Inch Diet, and it is a diet book, this was written by a guy who's primarily a designer. And so he was not a health nut. He was not a writer. He was not a, like a TV, Dr. Ozzy kind of person. He wasn't a celebrity. This was a guy who was a designer who worked for an independent advertising firm. He and his family buy a lake house. Old lake house, I think it was built in like the 40s or something. They go up there, they're excited, they're moving in. He goes to put his plates in the cupboards, and they won't fit. The cupboard doors won't shut, the plates are hanging like this much off the shelves, and he's standing there staring, going, what's wrong with these cupboards? What's wrong with these cabinets? What's wrong with this house? He starts to do a little bit of research, and what he finds out is there's nothing wrong with the house. It was entirely appropriate for the time period. But since the 40s, the average size of a dinner plate has gone from 9 inches to 12 plus. So actually, that was a perfect sized cabinet for maybe 1940 up to 1960. Now completely wrong. Now this is a guy who is not a writer. He looks at this situation and he starts to become fascinated with how the plates have gotten bigger. So what does he do? He goes out and he tries to find 9-inch plates. Tricky, because it pretty much goes from like 12 or 13 inches right down to salad plates now. Then what he does is they're using them at the lake house, and without even trying, he and his family start to lose weight. And he finds this fascinating. Again, this is a designer who works at an ad agency, and he said, there's something here. There is something here. So he talks to the guys he works with. It's a really interesting book. I mean, I don't know when you see the design and illustrator credits on a diet book that take up like 2 pages. It's beautiful. So what they did is they took pictures of plates and plate sizes and looked at portions, and it's a beautiful, I mean, because of what they do, it's a gorgeous book. So, what he did is he found his audience actually almost through kind of a coffee table book kind of audience. It's definitely not the, oh my God, it's January, I have to lose 20 pounds audience. It was a cultural commentary. Some people who did want to lose weight used it and found that they, decreased their portion size without thinking about it. He used his talents. He found his audience in a really interesting way. And he used his personal experience, which is what I was kind of talking about at the top of the hour, is he used an experience just of moving into his lake house and finding something odd and out of place. Now, what happens? This book actually did sell quite well. I don't know any specifics. I don't think it was like a New York Times bestseller or anything. I might be wrong. But what happened is everybody who bought this book, whether or not they wanted to diet, all those eyes ended up going back to their website. All those people who, I need an advertising agency. So it became this whole other, he wasn't trying to become a diet guru. He wasn't trying to become an author. But what ended up happening is because he, worked with his passion, worked with his personal experience, and found his audience, he drove a ton more eyes back to his website and his business. So that's what I call an example of, basing it on your experience and a departure from your expertise, although their expertise certainly was used in producing a beautiful book. And he did it traditional in print because when you start to get into anything that big and beautiful like a coffee table book, you're going to lose what would be the biggest appeal of that book if you just make it digital, at least now. I mean, that might change in the next few years. Oops. Did I go too far? I hate these buttons. Oh, okay. This is a microscope. This is a doctor out of Palm Springs. Now, I don't know if you've heard of these kinds of doctors. They do what's called, has anyone heard of full body scans? Anybody? Yes? Okay. These are basically, you go to a doctor, you pay them no insurance. You pay them about $10,000 cash, and they analyze, I mean, absolutely everything in your body. And they can tell you have the potential for this cancer, that cancer, that cancer. This is high, this is low. These are all it's beyond any physical you can ever imagine. Now, he has a private clinic in Palm Springs. He has what kind of clientele do you think he has? Extremely wealthy. Do you think this man necessarily needs any more money? Not necessarily. So his expectations were twofold. One was he knew that he had a lot to say about customer care in the health field, which is a very hot topic. He had been doing some interviews on radio, etc. He wanted to do more of those. He wanted to work his way into being sort of a Dr. Oz kind of person who gets called on to, be interviewed on, morning shows and things of that nature. So what he wanted was he wanted a nice book that laid out exactly sort of his own kind of manifesto about what he believed about the healthcare system, and why he thought what he did was valuable, and why he thought it should be available not just to people who can plunk down $10,000, but to more people in the country, no matter what they were earning. So now he decided to do print. Anyone want to guess why? It's very similar to the last question. He's given them out in his office. So he definitely wanted to have a very nice looking book that he could give to customers as sort of an added value little bonus. I mean, because, he's charging him like $10,000. Have a $25 book, really. It's on me, So it was that kind of attitude. So he's giving them something. He has laid out his entire approach to medicine and healthcare in this book. It's like a gorgeous brochure. If people wanted to buy extra copies to give as gifts, they could. He has a captive audience. They have just had their entire body examined, and I would never go do one of these things. It sounds terrifying to me, but they would. I prefer to live in the dark. But they have just had all this stuff done, and they probably want to understand as much as possible and remember as much as possible. So they take this book with them. If they love him, somebody comes over to their house. This is the book. This is that doctor. You should go see him. Your entire company should hire him. And when you have a book, next time he went in to go give one of his little radio talks, this is my book. It looks really nice, because he spent the money to make it look really nice. Now, he did it self-published because he wanted to keep all the profit. He didn't care whether or not a major publishing company was going to be promoting it for him. It really didn't matter. He wanted it in his office, in his customers' hands, and anytime he went somewhere to go do any sort of like media event. Okay, so that's Dr. Dan. Buzz pieces. Who's heard of buzz pieces? Yeah, yes, I would hope so. You've heard of buzz pieces too? Yes? Okay. Buzz pieces, this is a book called The Wealthy Freelancer. It's a great book. I like this book. Now, this book was traditionally published, and it's available in print and, of course, also as an ebook, because traditional publishers do that. This website also offers, and a number of very highly trafficked websites offer these too, what is called a buzz piece. So what's a buzz piece? It could be, 5 mistakes every freelancer makes, or 10 tips for streamlining your small business, anything like that. It's short, it's 1 or 2 pages, it offers something of value to the community you're a part of or the customers you're trying to reach. It's on your website, it's free, and it works to establish you. not only just establish your brand, but it also works to establish you as somebody who knows something about this particular area of expertise. Now, so this is the book they ended up doing, but buzz pieces live digitally on websites or blogs or company websites or Facebook, etc., if you're doing longer form things there. They are completely digital. You write them. It's like a blog, except it's a PDF. People can download it. It helps you build your brand. It helps establish you as an expert. Now, it also drives people to your site. One of the things that people like to do in this form of publishing is, hey, I'm giving you this really interesting piece of information. I'm giving you this helpful stuff. All I want from you is your email address. And so you are building an email. What happens is, absolutely, I want this free thing about how to be a better freelancer. Here's my email address. And so now, as a company offering any kind of service, advertising, design, babysitting, whatever, you are growing an incredibly large email list. You are not spamming these people. They voluntarily gave you their email address. Every time you do another buzz piece, you send it out not only to the new people who want it, but everybody else who's already signed up for your email list. And then you have more people going back to your site to see if you have new buzz pieces. You have more people with your message, your techniques in their, not in their hands, but on their computer or whatever, that they can easily email or tweet about or do whatever they want to do. And then if you get them to your, one technique that they've used is when they get people to their website, they offer, there's a book, there are these free buzz pieces, or if you want to pay $49.99, you can have a 6-DVD video course. So basically, you're getting them in the door with the free item, you are building your brand along the way, and you are growing your email list, and you're at least getting their eyes on your products. Now, if you just had a website with the product up, people may or may not end up there. If you're constantly offering buzz pieces that they can use to improve their own business for free, you're not only growing your email list, but they might start to look to you as a content provider, which is what we talked about at the top of the hour, providing content, being someone that somebody looks to for expertise in a certain area. Now, repurposing your efforts. Once you've done, this is the other great thing, once you've done, 5 or 10, buzz pieces, 10 buzz pieces, maybe at 2 or 3 pages a piece, slap them all together, pay a cover designer, and you have a 50-page ebook that you can go turn around and sell on your website, on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, on a Nook, everywhere for, $1.99 or something. You already wrote them anyway. It didn't cost you anything to write them. So, why not just repurpose stuff you've already written, compile them, give them a little unifying theme, and then you have added revenue, and of course, you have a whole different set of eyes on you and your business. Because not only are you getting people who are wandering around looking for information on how to be a better freelancer or how to be a better designer, you're also getting people just sitting up at 2 in the morning with their Nook in their lap going, I need to read something, what just got posted. And also, once you have gone from buzz piece to book, you are now in a position where that particular product might get a different kind of media attention, which is what we're going to talk about here. So this is just an example. This is from Mashable. I'm assuming most people in this room know what Mashable is. 20 free ebooks, if you can't read that, 20 free ebooks and white papers for better web design, okay? Now look at some of the folks that this is written by a website, this is written by a website, this is written by a website. These are all companies or small businesses that put up 10 tips for designing, integrate design, top 10, guide, all this sort of stuff. These were all papers or small books put up by companies or small businesses or individual freelancers. Now, are they making money off these? These in particular, in this case, no. But they could be. I mean, this is just one example. You can also, they also do lists of, you know, best books under $1.99. I mean, so they could be making money off of these. But look at what happens. Because it's not just a blog post, because it's not just, you know, not just a buzz piece, they've actually gone ahead and made it into a larger format book. They have gotten publicity from Mashable. So again, the expectations for these folks wasn't necessarily, I'm going to become the next Stephen King because of my free web design ebook. It was, I am going to establish myself as a content creator, and by having something that is more significant, more juicy, more available, that is going to show up in bookstores, because blog posts don't show up in bookstores, but this stuff does. I am also now opening myself up to getting additional publicity. You do a beautiful brochure, you're not going to get an article covering how great your brochure was. But if you do an ebook that people like, you may very well end up on one of these lists. And what does that happen? That translates, again, to more eyes on your website, to more eyes on your business, and that in turn can help generate business. So that's where we talk about bundling any tip sheets you've already done. It's just an extension of the other screen. You can sell it if you want. These are examples of free ebooks. These could very easily be 99-cent, $2.99, $5.99 ebooks. And then you open yourself up to what I would call an additional publicity bump. Okay, so now I'm going to give you some, this is going to be a little overwhelming, but I'm reminding you again, all of these resources are going to be in the notes that you can download from my website. If you are going to go the traditional route, okay, you want a traditional publisher, you want that kind of cachet where you have, you know, a Random House or a Simon & Schuster behind you. You want to make sure you're in a Barnes & Noble brick and mortar store. Here are some very basic, but I mean just classic resources. Write the Perfect Book Proposal by Jeff Herman. It's great because he actually gives you examples of book proposals that sold. He breaks them down. He analyzes them. Anybody who likes to sort of learn from example, it's spectacular because he shows you exactly what to do and what not to do. And they're real proposals. They're not like made-up things. And then he also has a guide to literary agents and editors. And then, of course, there is the old classic, the writer's market. People may have seen there's writer's market, photographer's market. There are many market books. These all have websites now, too, where you can sign up for a pretty small fee, actually, and you can actually search agents according to what kind of books they represent, what markets they represent in. Not all agents do how-to books. Not all agents do books for adults. You can really target who you're approaching that way. So these are excellent traditional book resources. Now, if you are going to go the self-published route, there are a number of places online where there is a lot of conversation going on about this. Now, these are primarily fiction folks, but all of the technical aspects of self-publishing, marketing aspects of self-publishing, trial, error, things that are working, things that aren't working. These are amazing websites. I hate these buttons. Okay, these are great websites. J.A. Conrath has now started to be quoted in places like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. He's been self-publishing for years. People look to him for advice in this. Yes, sir, in the front row. Oh, yes, thank you very much. I forgot that. And he's making $600,000 a year off of his little books that he sells. And that's not a bad amount of money. And none of them are priced over... Oh, that's right. And Amanda Hawking just bought her house for cash. So these are... Now, but these are people who, they are working... You know, they are working all the stuff we've been talking about. They're working the content. They're working their networks. They are making sure they're getting their product in front of as many eyes as possible. But what's nice is there is a lot of, here's the other thing. Even if you're going to write, say you're a web designer or an advertiser or whatever, and you want to write a book about your business, not so you think to yourself, well, you know, I'm not a fiction writer. Maybe I don't want to, you know, go on these, you know, these comment boards. Well, of course you do, because you're now also a writer, and now here's a whole other community of people who are going to know that you exist, and guess what? They probably all need designers at some point. So you can't always just think, I have to stay in my own little world to promote and do my thing. Those days are over. Cover artists. If you are going to self-publish, whether it's digitally or print, please, I mean, I know there are a lot of designers at this conference, so you guys should all know that I'm sure you've had clients before that are like, well, I did this myself. I think it looks pretty good, and you just want to retch and fall over because it doesn't look any good. If you go into a local bookstore, you can spot a self-published book that they designed the cover on their own a mile away. You can spot it from across the room. So you can get folks who will do a book cover for $350 to $850. I'm not saying that that's, you know, pocket change, but you want this book, especially if you're doing it for your business, this is representing who you are and how you work. It cannot look crappy. If it looks crappy, you look crappy. Now, the other thing is, again, these resources will be on the site, on my site. When it comes to, there's a difference between people who design book covers for books, and there's a difference with people who design book covers for digitally sold books. The people who do the ones for the ones who are selling online know that your book cover has to look interesting when it's this big, because that's how everybody's looking at it on a computer screen. That affects design dramatically. So there are a lot of people who have specialized in in book covers solely for digital online books. Now, my husband is in the room, so I am obligated to put up these two book covers. There's Joe. These are two book covers he had done. I actually like this one the best. These were for...
These are both for digital. The one on the left is a nonfiction book, collecting short stories. They're not short stories, they're science articles from...
This is an example of repurposing old. Joe took old articles that had been published in print that were now out of print, and the rights had reverted back to him. He compiled them, slapped a cover on them, and now he's selling them. And now he gets all, so again, repurposing, but you know, paying somebody to actually design a cover that works for you. Ebook formatters. If you're savvy, you can find out how to do this on your own. We have formatted stuff on our own. But there is also, it can be very affordable to just have somebody else do it for you who does it all the time. Time is money. If it's not something, if you set yourself a very small budget for what you want to do for this, this can be very worthwhile because you know it's going to get done. You know it's going to be readable either in EPUB or Mobi. You know it's going to upload correctly to all the appropriate digital sites. So you might want to look into a formatter. And we talk, and then finally, once you've written it, you know who your audience is, you know how you want to reach them, you have your book done. These are places you can monetize your content and upload them. In addition to anybody who sells things, of course, you can absolutely sell them directly from your website, which is the best way to go. This is especially true if you have a lot of traffic to your site. Then you're not sharing profits with anybody. You're not sharing 30% or 70% or anything. It's all you. But if you want to get it up on iTunes or Kindle and all that sort of stuff, these are the folks that can do it for you. A lot of them also have kind of package deals, which, you know, depends on how much you want to do on your own and how much you're willing to learn. It goes. We're all human. They blur before your eyes. This is a wonderful resource, the Editorial Freelancers Association. A lot of good people on there. There are references. I mean, it's pretty easy to figure out who has been doing this and who hasn't. Their resumes are all up there. It's a really, really great resource. Now, why would you want to spend all of this money to do something like this? Because of recipes. And I'll tell you about recipes. So I'm giving a talk about this. Actually, I was giving a talk most specifically about doing a nonfiction book proposal. And this is my last screen, Michael, about doing a nonfiction book proposal. I go into all this detail about how to arrange your proposal, how to format it, what different sections you need to make sure that you have, blah, blah, blah. I tell people, even if you've already written your book, Publishers who are doing nonfiction publishing want to see a proposal, so don't give them your book. Do a proposal. It can be based on the book you've already written. This is like a 2-hour talk I gave. Afterwards, this woman comes up to me and she says, I finished my book. How do I get it published? And I said, well, you have to do a proposal. You know, we talked about all this, and I'm going on. And she looked at me and she said, but it's finished. But, meaning like, but why do I have to do all that? I'm done. It's done. Can't I just, go sell it? And she hands it to me, and this is what is on the cover. Recipes instead of recipes. And it wasn't a book about pies. It wasn't cute. It was just the cover, the title of the book had a giant typo in it. Anyway, so that's actually just wanted an excuse to put strudel on a slide. So yes, get notes of this talk at my website. On Twitter, I tend to tweet about freelance issues, money issues, and odd popular history. And I'm on Google+. I'm not entirely sure why, but I am. I'm sure other people will get there at some point. And so that's how you can find me. And you can find me here. My email address and all that sort of stuff is here. I don't know that we have about 5 minutes till the next talk starts. So I know I have to vacate this premises, but I'll be wrapping up if people want to ask me any quick questions. But thank you.